I waited a lot longer than I thought I would to play Resident Evil Village. I wouldn't say it was any kind of mistake waiting this long, and was thankfully able to avoid spoilers after all this time. I have now completed this game and beat it 4 times in a row. More or less, this game was the only game I played for a little over a week. So the question remains, is it the best Resident Evil game I've ever played? Let's get into it. I still think RE Engine is one of the best looking and well optimized engines used in the industry. I thought RE7 looked great, and I still do. That game still looks damn good, but since the release of games like Devil May Cry 5, Resident Evil 2 Remake, Resident Evil 3 Remake, and of course, RE Village, the engine has improved in a big way in a really short period of time. Arguably, Resident Evil Village is the best any Resident Evil game has looked, but if you take Resident Evil 2 Remake, if you take Resident Evil 3 Remake, and you said, I think those look better, I'm not gonna fight you, I think they all look amazing. Looking at Resident Evil 2 Remake, I still love it. You know, the textures, everything about it, but a lot of that stuff, things like character models, shadows, and lighting, and Resident Evil Village really sell this game. Village is also one of the first Resident Evil games to have ray tracing. I don't think it's the first game, but one of the first games, and while it is impressive, the ray tracing in this game doesn't do enough for me to trade off for more consistent performance. I did have ray tracing turned on for most of my first playthrough, but I turned it off for the other 3 playthroughs because I was like, I don't think I'm gonna miss this much at all. It's really nice to have all of those sweet bells and whistles in one of the most incredible engines ever created, but what's a good horror game without the other good stuff? Artistically speaking, Village is one of the best games I've ever played. The atmosphere alone in this game puts most other horror games I've played to shame. The village itself, the wooded areas that surround it in particular, are extremely well done. From the outside to the interiors of this game, environments are extremely well varied and never feel samey. Even when you're in some of the more basic houses that have nothing to do with the story, there is a lot of attention to detail that you don't see with many other games in this genre. Off the top of my head, I can't think of a game in this genre that's first person that has better environments. Maybe Alien Isolation, and some of you know how much I love that game, but there's so much fan service there. The creators were obviously fans of the movies, and they took their time with that game, so maybe Alien Isolation, and that's it. Like many other Capcom games you may or may not have played in the past, there is just exceptional animation work being done here, and that goes for some of their more recent efforts as well. I don't want to leave that out because it's not just a visual thing, it's not just an artistic thing. Animations in this game are very well done. I don't know what Capcom is doing, but they're doing it better than most in the industry. I'm just being honest, I feel like Capcom right now has got to be top 3 for animations in the industry. However, you know, just one little nitpick with this game, some of you probably wouldn't cry about it, but I don't like the flyback animations you get sometimes when shooting enemies with weapons like the shotgun. It just feels weird and dated, it looks a little bouncy, it just feels off compared to everything else you see in the game. Village has this really good sense of scale that you don't really get with 7 or things like the Resident Evil 2 remake, but those were guaranteed to be a more linear experience anyway. So just so we're clear, that's not a knock on any of those games. It does seem like Capcom wanted Village to feel a lot less linear. It is still a linear game, but also giving fans some terrific atmosphere and more room to play. I don't want to confuse anyone. This is not an open world. It's just probably a little bit more open than other Resident Evil games we've played in the past. There's just more freedom when you're playing this game, period. Going back to the engine, you know, it's just so well done. I couldn't tell a huge difference between the seamless cutscene transitioning into gameplay segments. I love that. It's been in gaming for quite some time now, but with Capcom, with Village, I think this is their best work when it comes to things like that. And how about that opening cutscene where the story is being read to Rose? It's pretty mind-blowing. The animations, the overall visual aesthetic of that, when it was over, I was like, can we get a game with this art style and characters? That would be awesome. Capcom continues to target 60 FPS with this engine, even on consoles, so very impressed. Look at these games, they look amazing. They're running at 60 FPS, it's awesome. Capcom's still one of the small handful that will target 60 FPS with their engine, even on consoles, so thank you, Capcom. I played on PS5, but yeah, you can surely achieve much higher performance on PC, but I came away more than satisfied with the PlayStation 5 version. The thing that improves most in this game over Resident Evil 7 is the gameplay. Village, especially in the first 8 to 12 hours, has the best combination of horror and action I've ever seen in a first-person game. 8 to 12 hours, you know, that's going to vary. Could be a little bit less, could be a little bit more. It does depend on how well you're playing and what difficulty you've selected. In some ways, it's just really hard to describe how great those 8 to 12 hours are. The first 45 minutes or so of the experience, yeah, very, very cutscene heavy, and I was beginning to worry that this was going to play more like some of the other modern games I won't mention in this review. Crisis quickly averted, though, as one of the game's villains has decided that you deserve a chance to live, and you're quickly thrown into this rabbit hole of horror. The first few segments of the game have you doing typical Resident Evil, you know, survival horror type of stuff. There's like an overwhelming amount of lichens and not nearly enough ammo to take them all out. That becomes apparent very early on. That's also the point, I think. You're not meant to win this fight in the first playthrough and I guess complete the area. No matter what, you're going to end up in a cutscene where you're shot with an arrow and you're forced to watch this scene play out. As it turns out, this is all sort of part of the plan, and those running the show want to see what you're truly made of. Otherwise, we wouldn't have much of a video game after this moment. Shortly after this moment, you find a young girl and her family, and that doesn't work out as intended. We then find ourselves with everything we need to go and see Lady Dimitrescu. This section of the game was one of my favorites because things like ammo and other useful items are not in abundance. And now that I'm thinking about it, I never really did get good with the knife in this game, but need to try something with it because there is a trophy for doing so. So if you prefer to shoot your way out of sticky situations like I do, conserving your ammo is still a must. This castle also plays out a little bit like Resident Evil 2 Remake, Alien Isolation, and other games that have a lot of hide-and-seek type of moments. Fortunately, Village allows the player to fight back a little bit more than things like Alien Isolation. Lady Dimitrescu and her 3 daughters are one of the more challenging areas, I would say, in all of Resident Evil.
Let's devour his man-flesh quickly, Mother. I am the one who captured him.
Now, daughters. First, I must inform Mother Miranda. But later, well, there will be enough for everyone. Budama!
Some of their attacks leave you with little to no health, and depending on difficulty, Miss White Dress with an amazing waistline may even be able to one-shot you.
Oh, Lady Dimitrescu. Beautiful even in death. That waistline, yes.
She has like these crazy long claws, and her surprising quickness for her size in a more open environment are no joke. Not to say those 3 daughters aren't a problem, because they are. When you begin to hear those flies and they start to surround you, it is time to run. You can't fight these 3 daughters head on, and beating them will require specific things in the environment and the story to help you out. They do want your man blood though, so be prepared.
Looking for Rose? Man blood.
When you're doing a lot of this running around, I hope you also know where the lady of the castle is, so you don't bump into her along the way. The daughters can't go outside, so be mindful of that when you're playing and trying to think of different strategies to avoid them. Lady Dimitrescu does not have that limit, and once you reach a certain point in the game, she can go just about anywhere. There are also more basic enemy types throughout this location and just Resident Evil Village as a whole. Some sections of the game they can be passed up entirely, you know, as far as the basic enemies are concerned, whether that's to conserve ammo or you just don't feel like it, whatever the case may be, you're scared, I don't know. But sometimes they drop helpful items, so it's really up to you, and man, really, that's Resident Evil. Many of the items you pick up can be used for crafting ammo and med kits. I crafted very little ammo in my first playthrough and usually found that I needed to craft a lot more health items above anything else. More powerful enemies like your boss types or your mini boss enemies, you know, they will drop items upon death, but these are good for nothing but selling. You would think the bigger, more challenging enemy types would drop some very, very serious loot worth a lot, but they don't, at least not in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, some of the items they drop are worth a lot more than a lot of the other stuff you'll find in the world, but Even on the highest difficulty, their sell value was the same as playing on normal. A simple Google search led me to believe that killing basic enemy types would go from 1k to 5 to 10k on a different difficulty setting, and the enemy type. That wasn't the case in my experience. I don't know what happened. I don't know if Capcom patched it somewhere along the way. They felt like they were being too generous with the money on higher difficulty settings. I have no idea, but they must have changed it because that wasn't my experience. Once we move on from that first location, that's when the game really opens up, and the merchant, also known as the Duke, explains all of this to you and the 4 major houses. House Beneviento is arguably the best house in the game for the horror aspects of this genre. I don't remember a location or a build-up in any of the Resident Evil games that were as well done as this is. That walk, the build-up to the house itself, the fog, the dolls next to the grave. Capcom dug deep in their bag for this whole section, and it paid off in such a huge way. Walking into the house feels very calming and very normal at first, but if you play horror games, you know that this shit is about to go down. I don't want to say too much about this section of the game because it's easily the most disturbing part of the entire game. It's also the one house and village where you'll feel the least capable, as all of your weapons are stripped from you soon after you enter. I promise you, you are in for a treat. If you love horror games, if you love this genre, you are in for more of a mindfuck type of experience. If you've never played before and you've been able to avoid most spoilers up to this point, you are not ready for this. Even when I'm just thinking about Ethan's breathing when most of the section is over, I'm like, man, that's probably what I sound like if I didn't have these headphones on, because it is intense. Later parts of this game are fun. They're a lot of fun and still have great atmosphere, but aren't nearly as good with those horror aspects as this section and the first section of the game. In fact, there is one area that may as well be a shooting gallery because that's all you're doing. It's fun, again, a lot of fun, but it's still just shooty McShooterkins the entire time. That part of the game almost felt like Capcom was saying, hey, for those that like mercenaries, we got you. This segment of the game was made for you. Sure, sections like that end with cool boss fights sometimes and some nice pickups, but it's still all action. The area before this shooting gallery was awesome because I think they took what was great about the atmosphere and what you've experienced up to this point and blended it to perfection with the action. In this particular area that I'm referring to, you'll have some really tough Lycan battles, you'll have those fights, but you'll spend most of your time trying to reroute power to a building.
What's so funny?
You're stupid. You talk too much.
And all of that leads to, of course, a boss fight. I'd say it's probably my second favorite boss fight in the game. Man, whatever it is, that green acid rain shit this boss spews out is no joke, even on the normal difficulty setting. In between some of the main missions, there is some cool and interesting side stuff you can engage in. There are tons of hidden items throughout the village. A lot of them will require a more important story item or two to obtain, but they're worth it. If you're trying to maximize the amount of money and upgrades you wish to have, definitely do these things. Many items are worth maybe 1,000 to a few thousand, others are worth tens of thousands, and if you're interested in things like better weapons and more inventory space as quickly as possible, I'd recommend exploring this world completely. And when you start selling a lot of these things to the Duke, you begin to see what the game really has to offer in terms of gameplay and combat. Upgrading my inventory was a big focus for me because I like to hoard everything, like absolutely everything. I didn't need to, but I was trying to hoard weapons that I no longer needed because I eventually found a more powerful one to take its place. The very first pistol they give you, for example, turns out it was a bit of a mistake to even upgrade that at all, as much as I did in the first playthrough, considering I found another that was a lot better not too far into the game. Same for the first shotgun the game throws at you, which I believe can be missed as a free option, which is interesting. No worries though, the Duke will have it in stock a little later in the game. Your ammo can be sold, your explosives can be sold, it's all in how you want to play. There are cooking options for killing some of the game's wildlife and bringing back those items to the Duke. I wouldn't sell those items though, because those wildlife items you can upgrade things like your permanent health and speed. I don't think I was too invested or interested in that stuff until my second playthrough though. Upgrading your weapons, especially the more powerful ones, does cost a hell of a lot of money. It will take multiple playthroughs to upgrade and max out every possible weapon. Pro tip though, if you're doing some trophy hunting, upgrading one of the game's shotguns or better assault rifles are really good choices. Multiple playthroughs or New Game Plus will also unlock challenge points which allow you to buy models for the model viewer, or more importantly, awesome cheats like infinite ammo. You will not be disappointed, a lot of guns and a lot of upgrading. One of the final sections of the game was said to be the most challenging, at least if you listen to what the Duke has to say. He claimed Heisenberg would be the most dangerous, but I didn't really find that to be the case at all. I'll be honest, I think I just disagree a little bit because the basic enemy types that you find in this area with Heisenberg, they have, light armor, or some of them have very heavy armor, but they also have weak points, but I found them a lot more fun and challenging than Heisenberg himself. It became apparent to me that Capcom wanted you to earn those last couple of boss fights because the enemies here are tough. Without all the proper items, yeah, they're tough. Pro tip, some explosives or flashbangs, carefully placed shots in any part of the game, but especially this one, will save you a lot of headaches. There is so much more I could say about the gameplay in this game, but to sum up and throw it all in a nutshell, I'd say this is about as perfect as it gets for those that love that perfect blend of horror and action.
He is ready.
Shut your damn hole! And don't be a sore loser! Go find your food somewhere else.
Quiet now, child. Adults are talking.
I'm the child. You're the one who's arguing with Miranda's decision.
You wouldn't know responsibility if it was welded
Oh,
to
keep growing! One day your head might actually fit your ego!
The story in Village is one of the better ones I think Capcom have told in a really long while. Not only does the gameplay put RE7 to shame in every possible way, so does the story, so does the writing. We begin in the Winter's home with Ethan and Mia both returning in this first-person sequel. Ethan carries their child upstairs for some nap time as he and Mia soon prepare to sit down for a meal. It doesn't take very long for things to go from 0 to 11 in a hurry because soon after, Mia is killed and Ethan and Rose are taken away by Chris Redfield.
Mia, get down! Mia!
Also, Capcom, thank you for making Chris look awesome again. Thank you for making him look badass again. Not sure what we were doing at the end of 7 there, but that wasn't it, Chief. Transporting Ethan and Rose also goes left in a hurry, and you quickly find yourself waking up alone in a very cold, snowy area. Resident Evil has always had crazy moments where you're just like, how did that happen? How is this possible? And you'll see a lot of interesting things happen to Ethan throughout this game, and you're still going to wonder, how is that possible? How is he alive? How did he not at the very least pass out from this or that event? But I promise, all will be revealed. After making his way through that first area of the village, Ethan soon finds himself in a room with Mother Miranda and the leaders of all 4 houses. Without saying too much, dare I say, and I'm gonna say it, I know it's bold, these are the most interesting villains in a Resident Evil game in a long time, and possibly ever. A little bit of a side note here, and again, another minor nitpick, but they pulled a fast one with the marketing for this game. I feel a little bit led on, and maybe some of you felt the same way, but it's nothing to cry in my pillow over. So what am I talking about? The marketing in this game made you feel like Lady Dimitrescu was a huge part of this game, and while it still may be true to some degree, she is not the main focus or the reason this game continues until the very end. It sucks, even if just a little bit, because when you read up on some of the information about her, what Capcom was originally going to do, the original concept art, how her daughters came to be, it is very interesting stuff. At least I thought so, and I wanted more. I wanted to feel that chase, that feeling that you get in the castle in some of the other areas of the game. I didn't want to feel it the entire game, but I was hoping for a little bit more of that throughout the experience. I enjoyed when those flies are surrounding you, giving you that feeling of, is there a window or a safe room nearby? Where do I go next? Lady Dimitrescu getting me all hot and bothered with her angry face, complaining about my filthy man hands. It's just something I won't get in other games.
Oh, shit.
There you are. All this for a child who isn't even here.
What the hell do...
You ungrateful, selfish wretch! You come into my house! You lay your filthy man hands on my daughters! And now you even try to steal my property! How dare you!
Please, sit on my face. suck me off, something. All of the houses have interesting characters and even more interesting backstories.
Like I'd let you get away. You'll be sliced to ribbons before you ever see a child.
If we just focus on how each of them obtain their abilities or why they look a certain way, it's far more interesting than the backwoods kind of stuff that we've seen in 7. And again, this may also be crazy to say, but I think the second or third most interesting character in the entire game also appears to be the most harmless. Of course, I'm referring to the Duke. So what's his story? Well, that's the thing. We don't really know. Capcom gives you a few little hints, maybe some possibilities, but there really isn't enough there to put any pieces together. It's just a guessing game. There are some crazy fan theories about his origins. Some believe he may even be God. Some believe he may be a figment of Ethan's imagination, but that doesn't explain why he's able to buy and sell things through him and gather up all of these items. One of the more logical theories, I think it's one that, makes the most sense, is Capcom intended for there to be a 5th house, and the Duke would have played a much bigger part in this story. There are hints of that. If you pay attention in the story and some of the surrounding environments, there are hints of that, but they also make reference to him doing some sort of business with Lady Dimitrescu. I've seen a lot of people complain over the years that Ethan isn't a very good protagonist, and he's even worse in Resident Evil Village, and that Capcom needs to hurry up and move on from this whole story. I understand why people feel that way. I think I get it, but I'm not bothered by his character at all. I enjoy Ethan and Mia a great deal, and I'd like to see their story continue in some way.
I'm sick of bugs.
I think we'll see some form of that moving forward. I'm not sure what direction they'll go, but I think we'll see that. Resident Evil Village improves on the last game, again, in every possible way. The visuals are still amazing. The gameplay has that perfect blend of two genres, and many have compared this to Resident Evil 4, and it's not hard to see why. The story and its characters are some of the best in Resident Evil, if not all, of this genre. New Game Plus offers up a ton of guns and upgrades to keep you busy for some time to come. But by my 4th playthrough, I skipped most of the cutscenes and just blasted my way through absolutely everything. Capcom has had some stumbles over the years. They've made some mistakes. They've been anti-consumer at times. They've made some piss-poor titles, in my opinion. I've talked about this tons of times, but they are getting it right with Devil May Cry and Resident Evil. All things considered, graphics, animations, attention to detail, some of the writing in their games, Capcom still top 5 developers right now in my book. I'm going to give Village a 10. I was thinking a 9. This really deserves a 9. But I almost feel like I have to give it a 10 because there aren't many games that make me want to go back through multiple times immediately after finishing that first playthrough. That is a sign. It is a sure sign, a sure bet, however you want to put it, that I finished a fantastic game, and it's one that fans of this series and the genre shouldn't miss. Thank you guys so much for watching, man. I do appreciate it. Share this video, like this video, greatly appreciated. Have you played Resident Evil Village yet? If you haven't, man, you should. If you like video games at all, I think this is one that I can say, yes, you should still give this game a try. It's not like super scary. It doesn't have like crazy amounts of horror, but it is there, and I think you're gonna enjoy it. You guys take care. More reviews very, very soon. Have a good one. Peace. Oh, also, get sucked off.